Good morning, bonjour, good day. I want to start with one major focus today. I want to reiterate how important it is for us to have access to paid sick leave. I spent Friday speaking with a lot of people directly impacted. Workers who've been on the front line, spoke with retail workers who have been going through this pandemic, working every single day, and then being shut out because of lockdowns. I spoke to folks that work at a gas station, spoke to folks that keep us moving, working in transit. And I spoke to an early childcare educator. And for those who had paid sick leave, it meant that they could take time off and they could get a vaccine. They could take time off if they felt sick. But for the other workers, it was a constant fear that anytime they got sick from work, they're worried and nervous that they were going to infect their family and their friends, the people they live with. They were nervous that they were going to infect their colleagues if they went into work sick, but they weren't able to make that decision. They didn't know how to stay at home and they couldn't afford to. And I spoke to public health officials who said again and again that this is the most important tool to stop the workplace transfer that's happening. Workers need to be able to stay at home with a functioning paid sick leave. And I want to be very clear. There is a paid sick leave program at the federal level. New Democrats fought to bring it in. Justin Trudeau knows, the experts have said again and again, it's just not good enough. So it needs to be improved. This is not a question of jurisdiction. Justin Trudeau has already admitted that the federal government has a role to play and has already put in place the program. So there's no question of jurisdiction. The federal government's already stepped in and said, yes, we've got a responsibility. They've just done a bad job. Justin Trudeau has done a bad job. We need to make it better. And it is vital that we do that immediately, not some distant future. We need to do it right now because people are going into work sick and they are getting sick themselves. They're spreading it to their colleagues and their families are getting sick. And that means that our healthcare system will be overrun and people will end up in the hospital not knowing if they can get the care that they need. So we need this Liberal government, Justin Trudeau needs to fix the paid sick leave program so it actually works and so we can save lives. Comme j'ai dit ailleurs, c'est plus que jamais important qu'on ait un programme de congé des maladies qui fonctionne. J'ai parlé avec plusieurs travailleurs et travailleuses qui ont exprimé leur peur, comment ils sentaient et c'est quoi l'enjeu. Le fait qu'il y avait des travailleurs qui auraient pu rester chez eux quand ils tombaient malades. Mais les autres travailleurs, ils m'ont dit que c'est impossible de rester chez eux sans avoir un congé des maladies payé. Et c'est exactement ça qui crée plus de problèmes. Sans un programme de congé des maladies payé qui fonctionne, ça veut dire que les travailleurs et travailleuses allaient au travail et ils ont risque de propager la COVID-19. Et ils ont aussi peur de retourner chez eux, sur leur famille, et propager la COVID-19. Donc, on peut arrêter tout ça. Le gouvernement fédéral a déjà mis en œuvre un programme. Ils ont mis en œuvre un programme. C'était les néo-démocrates qui ont forcé le gouvernement de faire ça, mais ce programme ne fonctionne pas. Donc, ce qu'on doit faire, c'est d'améliorer le programme. Justin Trudeau savait que ce programme ne fonctionne pas. Tous les experts sont d'accord. Donc, il doit améliorer le programme pour qu'il puisse fonctionner, pour qu'il puisse sauver les vies. C'est exactement ça notre demande. On va continuer de mettre la pression pour faire ces changements. With that, I'm ready to take your questions. Thank you so much and look forward to your questions.
Et nous allons passer aux questions, commençant par les questions au téléphone, comme à l'habitude. Une question suivie par journaliste. We'll now take questions, starting with questions on the phone. As usual, one question, one follow-up per reporter. Operator, do we have a first question? Operator, do we have a first question?
Sorry. Certainly, we have a first question from Catherine Lévesque from La Presse canadienne. Nous avons une première question de Catherine Lévesque, La Presse canadienne. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Oui, merci beaucoup. Bonjour, M. Singh.
Bonjour.
Je voulais savoir, est-ce que le NPD est en faveur d'un passeport vaccinal pour que les Canadiens voyagent à l'étranger?
Merci pour la question. Je pense, en particulier avec cette question, on doit suivre le conseil des experts en matière de santé publique. S'il y a de preuves, une façon de le faire qui montre une aide à la population, je suis ouvert. Mais pour moi, ma priorité à ce moment, c'est la vaccination de toute la population. Ça, c'est la priorité. Parce que si on a un tel passeport ou non, ça ne fonctionnera pas sans avoir une vaccination de au moins 70% de la population. Donc, on doit vacciner toute la population. Ça, c'est la priorité pour protéger les gens ici. Et on doit mettre tous nos efforts pour arriver à cette but. Sure. En anglais, ils ont demandé la réponse en anglais. So with respect to a vaccine passport, I'm open to hearing the public experts' advice on whether this would have a concrete benefit to Canadians. And if it would help Canadians, I think we should be open to considering it. But for me and for our party, for New Democrats, the priority right now is to get everyone vaccinated. That is the number one priority. We know that with or without a vaccine passport, if Canadians are not vaccinated, we will not be safe. So that's got to be our first and foremost priority. We need to get everyone in our country vaccinated. All efforts need to go towards that goal. And then we can look at other potential steps that would help us be safe in the future. Et votre suivi?
Oui, tout à fait. Je voulais aussi vous parler de C10 parce que, la semaine dernière, en comité, le NPD s'est opposé à la motion des conservateurs pour demander là, un avis du ministre de la Justice là, sur l'amendement là, qui est controversé en ce moment, que les libéraux ont fait adopter. Et là, votre parti, semble-t-il, a changé sa position et va maintenant se ranger du côté des conservateurs. Je me demandais qu'est-ce qui explique ce changement de cap? Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé en fin de semaine pour que vous changiez d'idée?
Donc, dans ce dossier, ce qui est clair, c'est le fait que les libéraux ont mal géré ce dossier. Et en fait, le but de cette projet de loi aurait été de créer un équilibre entre les entreprises locaux qui créent de médias, de contenu, et avec les entreprises internationales. Parce qu'à ce moment, il n'y a pas un équilibre. Il y a des grandes exemptions pour les entreprises internationales, ce qui est injuste. Mais en faisant tout ça, ce qu'on a vu, c'est qu'il y a des inquiétudes, des craintes par rapport au gouvernement libéral, les changements qu'ils ont faits et l'impact potentiel sur la liberté des gens de s'exprimer sur l'Internet et sur les médias sociaux. Comme vous savez, je suis quelqu'un qui utilise souvent les médias sociaux. Je comprends, c'est essentiel de garder la liberté d'expression et il y avait des craintes. Donc, on va on va appuyer la motion pour avoir un avis judiciaire, pour s'assurer qu'il n'y avait des impacts négatifs sur le droit de s'exprimer. C'est essentiel qu'on protège ce droit. Moi, je le comprends personnellement, mais je veux s'assurer que le but de créer un équilibre entre les internationaux, entreprises et locaux, ça c'est le but, pas un but, pas penser d'avoir un impact sur la liberté des gens. Donc ça c'est important pour nous et on va appuyer cette motion. Just in English on the same one. I think it's first and foremost fundamental that we protect freedom of expression. Freedom of expression is vital. It's so important. It's something that I'm a fierce defender of. And when it comes to social media, I use the platform a lot. I understand how important it is for people to be able to express themselves freely and not feel like they're limited. And while we agree with the principle of the bill, which was initially to make sure there's an equal playing field between foreign companies that produce media and local companies. Right now, there was an inequality where if you're a local Canadian company, there are certain rules that applied. But if you're a foreign company, then they didn't apply, and that's unfair. And so to create the level playing field is important. But some of the changes that the Liberals are proposing, because they've really poorly managed this file, it looks like they potentially are going to infringe on people's right to express, which is wrong. And that's why we'll be supporting a motion to put a pause on this to assess the impact, looking at the constitutionality and looking at the impact on people's right to have free expression. So that's really important. We're going to make sure that we defend free expression on the internet. It's important for people to have dissent, for people to express their opinions. They might disagree with the government. They might want to critique the government. And there should not be a limit on that. Those are very important things for a democracy, important things in life. And so we want to make sure those are protected.
Opérateur, prochaine question.
The next question is from Hélène Buzetti, les coops de l'information. The next question, la prochaine question est de Hélène Buzetti de les coops de l'information. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, M. Singh.
Bonjour.
Je voudrais seulement bâtir sur la question de ma collègue sur C10. Y a-t-il un événement ou un avis que vous avez lu ou constaté quelque part qui vous a amené, qui a amené votre parti à ce changement de position là, sur un avis de conformité à la charte? Merci.
Merci. C'est toujours le cas qu'on continue d'avoir des réflexions, des pensées sur un projet de loi et on continue de recevoir le feedback des gens et puis en faisant tout ça, en recevant tout ça, on a décidé qu'il y a une crainte qui existe et c'est une crainte importante parce que le droit de s'exprimer, c'est essentiel. Et avec le fait que le gouvernement libéral a mal géré ce dossier, ils ont ajouté des éléments qui soulèvent des inquiétudes comme ça. C'est juste, c'est important à ce moment de s'assurer qu'il n'y a pas un impact négatif sur le droit de s'exprimer. Le but en général d'avoir un équilibre, des lois qui appliquent pour les entreprises internationales et même pour les entreprises locaux, c'est toujours local, c'est toujours important, mais avec cette crainte qui était soulevée à plusieurs reprises, c'est important maintenant de s'assurer qu'il n'y aura un impact négatif sur le droit de s'exprimer.
Vous dites qu'il y a une crainte qui existe. Je veux juste que vous clarifiez. Est-ce une crainte que vous-même, vous et votre parti, partagez ou ce que vous nous dites, c'est que vous entendez les gens avoir peur et donc vous voulez comme prouver aux gens qu'ils n'ont pas raison? Et en parallèle de ça, considérant que c'est beaucoup le milieu de la droite ou même l'extrême droite comme Maxime Bernier, certains conspirationnistes qui soulèvent des enjeux par rapport à C10, craignez-vous, en prenant la position que vous prenez, d'un peu donner du carburant à ces mouvements qui voient dans C10 là, une espèce de théorie de Big Brother? Merci.
Merci. Je rejette absolument les théories controverses des gens comme vous avez mentionné, mais il y avait des craintes qu'on a réfléchi et on pense que oui, il y a des craintes légitimes et se sont basées sur le fait que effectivement, les libéraux ont vraiment mal géré ce dossier. Et en voyant leur malgérance, ça nous a donné un moment de réflexion que oui, on doit s'assurer qu'il n'y a pas ce problème. On a vu à quelques reprises que le gouvernement libéral fait exactement ça. Il propose quelque chose, peut-être une bonne idée, mais dans leur mise en œuvre, on voit plusieurs problèmes. Par exemple, avec le congé des maladies payées, c'était nous qui avons avancé cet enjeu, c'était important de le faire. On a dit qu'on a besoin de ça. Les néo-démocrates ont réussi à forcer le gouvernement de mettre en œuvre un programme, mais avec les détails du programme, encore, ils ont manqué le but, ils ont fait des erreurs. Donc, avec ce projet de loi, c'était la même chose. L'idée, en général, c'était de créer un équilibre entre les entreprises internationales et locales, mais avec les détails, ce qui était soulevé, c'est des erreurs du gouvernement libéral qui peut-être menacent leur liberté. Donc, c'est important de vérifier si c'est le cas et avec un avis judiciaire qu'on peut régler si ces craintes existent et si cette crainte va être réalisée ou non. Et donc, on peut le régler.
Operator, next question.
The next question is from Cormac McSweeney from City News. La prochaine question est de Cormac McSweeney de City News. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hi, Mr. Singh.
Hi there.
I have a couple of different topics I want to ask you about.
Sure.
So first off, the Johnson & Johnson vaccines, we're supposed to be getting the recommendations today from NACI on the J&J shot. However, Late Friday, we found out that Health Canada has put a pause on distribution to the provinces over quality control concerns. These are linked to that same plant in the U.S. where, there have been quite a few concerns and 15 million doses had to be scrapped. So what's your reaction to Health Canada putting this on pause? And what do you think you're going to hear today from NACI when it comes to the concerns around quality control, but also the concerns around blood clots?
Appreciate the question. I trust Health Canada. I think they do an excellent job, and they've been tasked with keeping us safe, and they've got great experts that'll give us advice that is in the best interest of Canadians. So we will follow their recommendation and support the recommendation. With respect to vaccines in general and the risks in general, we need to follow the public health advice. People who do get vaccinated need to make sure that they're following through with the advice of the healthcare professional, which is to monitor symptoms, to make sure that they're following all the advice that have been given so that they can take action if there's ever a concern that happens. So, but it is safe to take the vaccines. We must take them. They will make our fight against COVID-19. We will win this fight if we take the vaccines, if we get vaccinated. I've gotten mine. Encourage everybody to get their vaccine as soon as possible. Whatever one is available that's been approved by Health Canada will be safe, and definitely take it as soon as you can.
And just as a follow-up, I meant to ask in the first one whether you think that the issues that have popped up with the Johnson & Johnson shot might lead to more vaccine hesitancy among Canadians. But on another topic, I also want to ask, the Conservatives just before you were calling for Katie Telford to be fired over her involvement in these Vance allegations. And they signal that tomorrow they're going to use their opposition day motion to call for her firing officially within the House of Commons. Is that something that you and your party would support?
For me, this doesn't go to staff. This goes directly to the Prime Minister. We've got a Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, who knew about these allegations, knows about them now for sure, and has yet to do anything. There was a report in 2015 done by a justice, a Deschamps report, that outlined the very same problems in the military. This Liberal government's been in power for 6 years since then. They've been in power for 6 years, knowing full well a report that outlined a climate which is unsafe for women, where there is violence against women and harassment against women, a clear climate that was unsafe. Knowing that for 6 years, this Prime Minister had the responsibility to do something. It falls directly on the Prime Minister to fix this problem. It falls on the Prime Minister to do something to protect women, to make sure women are safe, to implement changes in the military to keep women safe. So it's not good enough for me, for the Prime Minister, or for a staff member to take the fall, or for a minister to take the fall. This falls squarely on the shoulders of the Prime Minister, who had the report, had the responsibility to protect women, and has failed.
Nous allons maintenant passer aux questions dans la salle. We'll now take questions from the room. Rachel?
Hi, Mr. Singh. Rachel Haynes from CTV News. I just want to follow up on what you're saying then. If it goes straight to the Prime Minister, then do you think the Prime Minister should step down if you don't think that Katie Telford should be fired for this?
I think the Prime Minister should fix the problem. I think that women should be safe. I think that the military should be a place where women are able to work and participate without fear of being harassed, without fear of any sort of sexual violence. And I feel like 6 years of a report collecting dust is wrong. This government, this Liberal government, is to blame. The entire government is to blame. Their ministers, Prime Minister, everybody knew of this report. Why didn't they fix it? This is an indictment of Justin Trudeau, of the Liberal Party. They were all in power for 6 years and they did nothing. I don't understand how this could happen. And now we're seeing more and more allegations that mirror exactly what was found in a 2015 report. Like, what is it going to take for this government, for the Liberal government, for Justin Trudeau and his entire team to do something about this? What is it going to take?
And what would you like to see done then? I mean, right now, the committee that's been sitting at the Defense Committee, a lot of it has been the back and forth of the politics of who knew what and when and a cover-up. But victims are asking for change now. So what will your party do to actually support victims and try to get these changes done?
Well, first and foremost, follow the recommendations of the 2015 report. They outline some really clear measures in an independent process for the ability to raise complaints, making sure that if complaints are raised, there's action there's something done. When a complaint is elevated from the ombudsman and makes it to the defense minister and makes it to the prime minister's office and nothing is done, it really sends a chilling message to women across Canada, not just in the military. So what is being done to make sure that there is a follow through? If a complaint is raised, what's the follow through? There's also a comment about there needs to be sustained there needs to be recognition of this dangerous climate or environment in the military, that it has to be recognized, and that the change has to be a sustained, consistent approach of acknowledging this problem, recognizing the problem, and then working to change it regularly.
Prochaine question.
Mr. Singh, Lee Berthium, Canadian Press. Good to see you.
Hey there, good to see you.
I wanted to just be very clear. You will not be voting, the NDP will not be voting in favor of the Conservative motion tomorrow. And you've also, kind of double barrel this if I can.
The motion on Katie Telford?
Yes, exactly, yeah. And you've also called for the government to basically act on the 2015 recommendations. They've appointed Louise Arbour. She's suggested that her job will be to kind of flesh out that main recommendation. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on Madame Arbour's appointment.
Sure. Let me start with the second one. So Madam Justice Arbour is incredible. A phenomenal human being who has left an incredible mark on the country, and is someone that is incredibly competent, just, and will do a great job at anything that she has to do. In this case, though, this is the Liberal government hiding behind an inquiry. As amazing as Madam Justice Arbour is, it will not change the fact that this Liberal government has been sitting on those recommendations. Whether if the matter was they tried to implement the recommendations, they tried to put it in place, and they tried to do something to protect women, and they failed, then they could say, well, we tried, it didn't work, we need more help to figure out what to do. They did nothing. They did absolutely nothing with a report in 2015, which is literally like deja vu, because it's Groundhog Day here. They had a problem, they did a report, a justice as well, made a whole bunch of recommendations, and now we're 6 years later, and their solution to those same sort of problems being raised is, let's do another report. Well, that is an insult. If they're not going to do anything with the report, they're not going to take any action, it is insulting to women who've been left waiting for any sort of concrete changes to protect them for 6 years. And now the concrete action is to do another report of exactly what they did 6 years ago. That's wrong. And I want to be clear, it has nothing to do with the incredible competence and skill of Madam Justice Arbour. It has everything to do with the incompetence and lack of action by this Liberal government.
And on Madame Telford, the motion tomorrow.
Oh, right. On the motion, we will advise you as soon as we're in a position to let you know where we're going to go with it. But again, our focus is that this is not about a staff member. This is about the Prime Minister, and about his lack of conviction and courage to do the right thing, to actually protect women, to bring in changes. And I believe that the responsibility falls on the shoulders of the Prime Minister.
I wanted to ask about the Budget Implementation Act.
Oh, yes.
Have you had a chance to go through it? Have you been briefed on it? And what are your thoughts on the document or the legislation?
Certainly. So there's some positive things. We see that there's an actual implementation of the federal minimum wage, which is something that we, of course, campaigned on, New Democrats fought for. But while they're going to implement it, it's going to be 6 months after, I believe, it's ratified. So why the delay? Why 6 months later? That seems to be unnecessary delay. We don't see any fix for paid sick leave. I mean, we've said from the beginning that is the most important thing right now that we can do at the federal level to protect people's lives and protect workers, is to make sure there's a paid sick leave that works. And we're going to continue to push for that. That's completely missing in the Implementation Act. And so in general, this is what we've seen with the Liberal government. They signal some good things and they say some good announcements, but when it comes down to the actual work being done, they're not doing the work necessary. Right now in this pandemic, two key things: we need to get paid sick leave, and we need vaccines to get to the communities that need it most. We need the most vulnerable people to get vaccinated. That is clearly what is not happening and what needs to happen, and this Implementation Act doesn't do that. So those are our concerns.
Next question.
Coming at me from a different side today.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you.
I wanted to ask you a story about that CBC News broke over the past couple of days we revealed that Major General Peter Daw, the commander of a special wing of the Canadian Armed Forces, wrote a glowing character reference for a member who was convicted of sexual assault. After we revealed the story, he was transferred. It was announced that he would be transferred to a different area within the Canadian Armed Forces. And then there was this outrage. People were upset that he was just being transferred. And it was announced yesterday that he would be placed on leave without pay. What do you make of the handling of this situation?
What is going on in the Canadian forces is deeply troubling for a number of reasons. We're seeing a pattern of behavior that makes out exactly what was said in the 2015 report by Deschamps, that there is this climate that is dangerous to women. And this climate or this environment is something that is very much imbued in the structure and has to be fixed. And I have to say that the men and women who serve, that are called to support communities in need, that showed up to help people in the long-term homes in Ontario and Quebec and saved lives, do incredible work. The men and women who serve do incredible work, but there is clearly a problem in the environment and in the structures. And those problems were identified in 2015. And we're seeing more and more examples of what happens when a government doesn't act. When a prime minister knows that there's problems, has a report, and then continued examples just prove that report is accurate and right, it just sends a message that is so painfully harmful to women, that they are not safe, they're not listened to, they're not being respected, and that has to end. And these are just more examples of that same environment that is dangerous to women that has to end.
But do you see anything problematic with the responses of the Canadian forces, where this member's behavior, this top-ranking official's behavior came to light, and their response was to transfer this person, as opposed to taking a more tougher response? Do you see any problem with that?
Yes. And the problem I see is exactly what was identified, that there is a structure in place that does not take these type of allegations seriously, that does not take, in this case, someone who's convicted of an offense seriously. There is a culture that exists that makes it dangerous for women, because certain actions that are putting women's lives in risk or putting their safety at risk are ignored, are not taken seriously. There's not proper follow-up. And all of those things highlight how vital it is for systemic change in the Canadian forces to protect women. We need that systemic change, and we need it now. Women deserve this, and we were going to fight for that.
Just want to ask you one quick question.
Sure.
What are your feelings about Justin Trudeau going to the G7 summit in England in June? Mark Garneau is there. He's going to be physically there in person, that is, as opposed to virtually attending. Just what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, traveling at this point in time shouldn't be a priority. Our focus should be on getting people vaccinated, on staying put, and doing our best to not increase risk of exposure. That should be our focus in this pandemic, and that's what I think we need to be doing. Right now, we've got to get paid sick leave improved. We've got to get people vaccinated. That should be our priority. And so I would encourage people not to travel at this point in time. So the Prime Minister should answer that question. I think our priority has to be focused on getting people safe and sound here in Canada first and foremost.
And this concludes our press conference. Merci.
Thanks.